Thank you Storyblocks for sponsoring a portion of today's video. The Nothing Phone 3. I've been using this thing for about a month now. And first off, I can say it's actually impressed the hell out of me, mainly because I'm coming from iOS. And I've been on iOS for, I don't know, like 10 years or so. And just for reference on what I've been using, I've been using the iPhone 13 mini for, I don't know, since it came out, I guess 2021 or so. But I want to talk about the Nothing Phone 3 because Nothing has always been sort of one of those brands that I'm actually super interested in. Just I've never had any of their products until now, and their product simply looks awesome. I like their whole aesthetic, and in a world of phones all looking like normal square bricks, I find Nothing is one of those companies that actually sort of changes things up. So if you recall phones from, I don't know, the 2000s, all of them were different. Some of them were sliding, some of them would flip, some of them would twist and whip around and crazy stuff. And I found that absolutely amazing back then, at least. And there's not so much you can change when it comes down to a phone with a bar form factor. Maybe you can change the shape a bit, the size. And again, I find Nothing is probably one of the only companies that seems to, I guess, experiment outside of, I guess, what would be considered the safe zone. That isn't to say the Nothing Phone 3 isn't safe at all, because it more than definitely is. Now, where my perspective might shift a little bit towards this device is that, again, I'm coming from a 4-year-old device. Again, I've had the chance to check out the iPhone 16s and 16s Pro, but I've always just sort of gone back to my 13 mini based off of my, I guess, everyday usage and simply the size. Now, that said, the size difference between these two devices is absolutely monstrous. This is absolute tank, and that's going to sort of be something I talk about. But what I want to primarily talk about is the fact that people sort of have just been complaining online that this isn't a flagship. And I swear I really don't know what the hell you guys are talking about, because for myself, this has been a full-on flagship experience. Now, it could be that ignorance is bliss on my side. Again, coming from such an old-ass phone, this feels like an absolute flagship to myself in terms of performance, the screen, everything about it feels like a flagship device to myself. Where I see people sort of complaining about this not being a flagship, I guess, would be that the chipset isn't on par with something like the 25 Ultra, the S25 Ultra from Samsung, or the 16 Pro Max, or whatever the hell. But for, I guess, an average user like myself, I would say I'm no longer a power user like I once was. But this thing feels like a flippin' flagship device from the actual usage of it, the display, the power and snappiness of this device, the cameras, everything feels like a flagship. So I'm not sure where, I guess, the discourse comes from that this isn't a flagship. If you could let me know in the comments why this isn't a flagship, I'd love to hear it. Now, from a price standpoint, I see there's still a difference. So even if this isn't up to par with an S25 Ultra or the 16 Pro Max, I looked at the prices in Canada specifically, and starting the S25 Ultra is about, I don't know, $1,900, which is bonkers. The 16 Pro Max is 1,750 Canadian, and this comes in at just under 1,200 Canadian. So even if it's not, I guess, a full-on, top-of-the-line, massive spec, best chip you can get flagship, I personally still think it is a flagship. So anyways, that's my first take on, whether or not this thing is a flagship. I could use this phone and stop on it and be happy with it for 5-6 years and not move around. Again, I've been happy with my 13 mini for 4 years at this point. And it's easy to say, hey, that Android has come a long way, man. Like, I remember Android always somehow being sluggish or slow in some way or another. And again, having checked out the more recent iPhones without any issues, Android now is actually fast as hell, boy. So I don't know when they sort of change that. Maybe it's the fact that these have an absurd amount of RAM or something. Now, that said, I sort of want to talk about my experience with this device over the last month. There's not going to be any sort of benchmarks. I don't care for that. But more so just my non-technical experience. And somewhat, I guess you can call it a review in my sense. I'm just a normie who doesn't benchmark stuff. So if you care about that, here's what I think about the Nothing Phone. Now, jumping more into sort of the design of this thing, this is where, again, I find the Nothing company sort of sets themselves apart from the competition. I find their devices actually just simply look different. And either you love it or you hate it. Some people just don't particularly like, I guess, the transparency or the different colored accents on Nothing product. I, for one, absolutely love it. And I even have the Headphone 1, the Nothing Headphone 1. I'll talk more about these. These are actually incredible, and they are now my favorite headphones of all time. But the build and design of this thing is great. I will say that as much as people say it feels good in hand, it's a premium product. If nothing's going to be positioning this as a flagship, it sure as hell better feel like it. And it more than definitely does to myself. And I can't say it's just the physical attributes of this device, because the actual UI looks awesome. I appreciate all the red accents, just like the red accents on the back end. It's one of the few, I guess, Android devices I've sort of played with. I've never really had one as a daily driver like this, but I just used it out of box. Obviously, I switched around my widgets and my toggles and all that fun stuff, but I actually really dig how Nothing actually sets up their base UI, and I didn't change much about it at all. Now, apart from the uniqueness of how this device actually looks, in a world of, I guess, in every cell phone that you buy, there's always less and less in the box. They actually give you a case, which I personally love. I didn't really have any plans to buy a case, but I'm happy there is one. It is obviously clear, so you can sort of see your phone still, so I appreciate that. But of course, with all the cutouts and all that stuff, and the wacky placements of the cameras on here, I appreciate that there is a case in the box. Now, my least favorite thing about the build and the design of this thing is the fact that it's just so damn big. Again, I'm typically using either my 13 mini or some insanely small dumb phone. I use a lot of dumb phones, which is why, probably just a little rehash, probably another reason why this feels like a flagship, because I'm coming from flipping dumb phones most of the times, or a 4-year-old phone, so this feels like I'm living in the future. So to me, again, it's a flagship, but it is just so damn big, and that's going to be a huge plus for some people. But I can never get down with larger phones, and this is the first time I've really committed to using a large phone. Again, going on 3 or 4 weeks at this point. And I've sort of got used to it after about a week and a half, and I could see myself maining this forever. But as somebody who switches a lot of devices, I just personally find it's very flippin' large. My dream would be this phone in a 5.3 inch size. That would be my absolute dream. One thing too is that the on-screen fingerprint scanner is quick as hell. So yeah, they did a good job with this device in terms of its actual build, design, fingerprint, all that fun stuff. Now, I mentioned Nothing's willingness to sort of try things out. One thing I don't really, I wouldn't say I don't like it, I just don't care about it, mainly because I don't find it all too useful. And you've probably heard other people say this, is that it's the whole, I guess, glyph matrix, or whatever the hell they call it. This little glyph thing here. It has its intended uses, but none of it is faster than doing something else. What I mean by that is when this device is face down and you want to check the glyph for the time or the battery, using that or doing that is going to be slower than just flipping your phone over to check the time or check the battery. So I don't really find the glyph matrix thing all too useful. Cool, if not kind of gimmicky, maybe, if you want to consider it that. But yeah, I haven't really used that feature. And for myself, it's just a black circle on the back of the phone at this point. That's definitely one of their unique features. Some people might love it. I just haven't really found a use for it yet. Another thing that is sort of a nothing only feature would be their essential spaces. And I haven't really used it because I know I can't commit to it. And that's a me thing, not a phone thing really. Essential spaces is pretty much a all-in-one spot where you can, take a screenshot, you can gather some ideas, you can take voice notes, and it's all in one single area. So I appreciate that they have that on there, but I personally already know that I'm going to be maybe swapping back to my 13 mini, or I'm going to swap to a dumb phone. And rather than have my thoughts all fragmented and segmented, and because I swap around so frequently, I haven't personally been able to commit to the essential spaces. If I knew I was staying on this device, essential spaces would be absolutely badass. I've talked about it quite a bit, but I'm actually huge into writing and just physical, tactile things. So versus essential space, because I move devices so frequently, I do a lot of note-taking and writing in little pocketbooks that I pretty much carry with me at all times. So that's my essential space. It's on paper, I guess. Performance-wise, coming down to something like this, again, it sort of feels like I'm living in the future. Every single thing I've done on this device has been near instant. I actually talked about my iPhone 13 mini a couple weeks ago, saying how quick and snappy this thing still is. And I guess because I've gotten used to it, but when I compare how fast this thing is to the Nothing 3, the Nothing 3 is fast, dude. Like, it is quick, which is all the more reason why I still think this thing's a flagship. How much faster than instant do you need everything to open? I don't know. But this is probably one of the best software experiences I've used. So whatever optimization Nothing did to the Android layer, very well done, because this thing is as fast as I could ever need a phone to be, which is again another reason why I could stay on this thing for 5 years if I had to. Going back to that chipset, I don't even know which one is in here really, but I don't really do any gaming on here, which is again probably another reason why I can't really complain about the performance of this thing. So while I see people are using, an S25 Ultra, they might be doing a whole lot of gaming, or they might be using all the power inside that device. So when somebody calls this a flagship and it's not as powerful as that, maybe, the compromise in the performance on the lesser chip, whatever one is in here, is enough for them to not like it. But I can say, as an everyday user, somebody who browses the web, goes on social media, takes a lot of photos, videos, and just the normal everyday things except gaming, this thing is literally near instant. So the performance wise, I'm not batting an eye at it, and it does an incredible job. One of the things, and it's not just myself, I actually handed this thing to my wife, and the first thing she talked about was like, holy shit, this screen is really good. So this is an OLED display. Pretty much every phone that comes out nowadays is an OLED screen, just because of the technology, how the display looks, how bright it gets, and they did a damn good job on this one. One thing I can say is that the 120 hertz, or whatever the hell the refresh rate on here, makes everything feel incredibly smooth, which I appreciate. And yes, this thing gets insanely bright outside. I can't say I know how this compares to another device except my 13 mini. And relative to my 13 mini, it pretty much looks like my 13 mini is off by comparison to the screen on here, especially when outside. So the screen on here has been excellent. And overall, it's smooth as hell. Despite how bright this display gets too, I will say the battery simply goes. I think maybe I might be considered more of a light user, but the battery on here for myself lasts 2 days on a smartphone, which is actually pretty rare. So whatever battery technology they put in here, I think this might be a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. It just goes, and I appreciate that. And I'm only using the adaptive brightness on here, so I'm not like cranking the brightness at all times. I'm just using the adaptive brightness, and the battery is great. When it comes down to charging too, I actually didn't know this had wireless charging until I put it on the wireless charger next to my bed, because coming from MagSafe on here, I just put it on the same charger and it started charging. I actually didn't know this had wireless charging, so I appreciate that. Otherwise, it charges fast as hell through the Type-C port. Now, before I talk about the camera on the Nothing Phone 3, I do want to give a huge thanks to Storyblocks for sponsoring a portion of today's video. Now, for myself, when I create a lot of my videos, one of my favorite things comes down to a lot of the details in the video, whether that be, how I frame my shot. It could be how I capture specific types of lighting. Now, there are going to be specific things I can't get, like particular shots, certain sound effects, motion templates, and there's a lot of those things I simply can't get personally, which is where something like Storyblocks comes in. I could search whatever I might need for my project. It could be a hippopotamus, it could be something like skyscrapers, drone shots, whatever it might be. I could search it, and Storyblocks will likely have it available to me. And it's all going to be unlimited downloads at a predictable subscription cost. And it's not just stock footage as well. Again, that comes down to things like music, sound effects. For myself, I was using animated backgrounds in this video. So typically for just about any project, there is going to be something here you can benefit from. The best part as well is that it's all authentic. So Storyblocks is sourcing from actual creators. So every clip either feels intentional or actually lived in or genuine. And in my world, at least, this does save me a good chunk of time, because I can focus on things like lighting, framing, my storytelling, and not spend a huge amount of time actually tracking down assets. So yeah, whether you're a creator like myself, an entrepreneur, a business, Storyblocks can help you bring all of your media to life. Right now, you can get 2 months free if you do sign up for an annual plan, which is pretty awesome. So if you do want to check out Storyblocks, be sure to head to storyblocks.com/MinimalisTech. I will have that link down below as well. And thanks again to Storyblocks for sponsoring this portion of today's video. With that, when it comes down to the cameras on this device, it actually impressed me quite a lot, but there is one feature I despise, or the lack of a feature that I simply despise. I will say off the get-go, I don't really use the wide angle lens all too much, but I primarily just use the main lens and the telephoto periscope lens, whatever the hell they call it. And those two lenses have been absolutely excellent. I love shooting Fuji. Right now I'm shooting on my Fuji X2HS, and I love using my Fuji X100VI. And surprisingly, the Nothing Phone 3 has these presets or emulations for specific looks. I actually liked using them quite a bit. I'm not sure everybody will use that. I know the newer iPhone 16 lineup has something similar, but I actually just appreciate that whenever it comes down to taking photos. That said, I can say the main snapper on here was great. I don't really shoot RAW because I don't even mess around in Lightroom. Again, I'm sort of that normie everyday user, as you can tell by now. But the photos on here actually turned out excellent. I'm primarily a huge fan of the telephoto lens. I love having that on a cell phone versus just a digital crop. This one uses, I guess, that periscope thing where it actually gives you a real zoom. So I really, really dig that. One of the things that actually surprised me was how good the macro photography is. I think that actually uses the telephoto lens versus wide angle, which is what a lot of phones do nowadays. They use the wide angle for macro, but this actually uses the telephoto, and it ends up looking great. I took a photo of a flower out front of my house, and you can see like the individual grains of pollen, which was kind of bonkers. Wasn't expecting that. Beyond that, there are a ton of options on the camera on here. Again, as somebody who likes using a normal camera versus my smartphone or phone, whatever I'm using, I appreciate that those features are there if I do need to use them. But man, when it comes down to video, I don't know why they don't have a 24 FPS option. As much as I could definitely download another app, I can use Blackmagic Cam, which I've done before on multiple other devices. I don't know why the native camera app just doesn't have a 4K at 24 frames per second. There's 30 and 60 frames per second, but not 24, which is what I prefer to shoot at. It just bugs the hell out of me. I don't know why that's there. It feels like that would be a pretty easy thing to implement. Here's to hoping it comes in a later update. That said, the footage on here looks excellent. I've used it with my kids. I've used it at the gym. I've used it pretty much everywhere I go. I've tested it out a bit, and the camera for video on here does a great job. To round out my thoughts on this thing, I want to talk about two other things, and that's going to be, I guess, when it comes down to audio on here. I just got to say the speakers on the device itself are awesome. I'm one of those weirdos that pretty much always plays music everywhere I go. And I love using the speakers on my built-in phone when I'm in the shower, for example, or if I'm just vibing out on my patio or whatever else. I'm always playing music, and the speakers on here are excellent. And I'm going to say that probably comes down to the bloody size of this device being as massive as it is. So the speakers on here are great. But for myself, a huge surprise was simply how good the headphone ones are. Now, these are obviously sold separately. I just simply wasn't expecting to like these as much as I have. I am an absolute AirPod degenerate. I use my AirPods a lot, or otherwise I use my Sony XM5s. And I love these more than both of those in pretty much every way. AirPods being earbuds, kind of a different product entirely, but I find myself reaching for these more times than not now, particularly when I'm home at least. Now, what's special about these, apart from, the obvious build and design matching the whole nothing branding and stuff, I still dig that. But these headphones have tactile buttons and switches, and it's one of those things where you don't realize how much you miss it until you've gone so long without it. The volume wheel on here has a tactile roller. The forwards and backwards on your tracks is a physical switch. The on-off button is a physical switch. The pairing and connection button is a physical switch. All of those things I missed. And I honestly really wish a lot more companies would just go back to a tactile button or a switch. It is so incredibly satisfying. And while the scroll wheel doesn't actually have, a click to it, they do a good job audio-wise where it sort of sounds like you're clicking it while you roll it. And these sound excellent. Apart from the tactile buttons and dials and switches and stuff on these, it surprised me with how good they sound. There's an app I downloaded. What the hell is it called? The Nothing app, I guess. And you can sort of change your EQ on this device and sort of tweak it to your personal liking. Now, I'm no audiophile, of course, but I find the profile on these sound absolutely incredible. That could just be because the EQ was very well curated in the app for me specifically. But I love these. They sound great. The noise cancellation is awesome. And having used these for, 3 or 4 weeks, I've only had to charge them twice. So yeah, they did a damn good job. But yeah, before I ramble on too much about it, guys, this is a flippin' flagship. Disagree with me if you want. I'm the normal guy who doesn't upgrade his phone every flippin' year. I'm coming from a 3 or 4 year old device, and this feels like a flagship. And it's still cheaper than flagships that are on the market. Okay, it might not be as powerful, but when you consider what a flagship is, it's pretty much the main headship of whatever company. So Apple has the 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max. Samsung has the S25 Ultra. That's their flagship. And to me, at least, this is a flagship. It's Nothing's flagship. And for most people, I think it's going to be more than sufficient for the day-to-day user. And I think even the power users are going to love this device. So yeah, while it might not be as powerful as the others, it's still a bit cheaper than the others. So something to be mindful of. Nothing stopping you from buying it and trying it. And if you don't like it, you return it. So there's always that. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about the Nothing 3. Is this a flagship to you? Because I don't know, it is to me. That's just my unbiased perspective. But I might be using this for a long time. I might swap back to my 13 mini. I might go back to a dumb phone. But for now, I like the Nothing Phone 3. It does a damn good job. Appreciate you guys watching until the end. Till next time.
It's like springtime. After the last freeze, my whole